Even having these folks on the team, like, I feel, okay, now I'm obligated. I've said yes, you know what I mean? At least I have to give it my all. Hi, I'm Terry Jordan. I live in Lake Oswego, Oregon. It's right near Portland. I was 29. I worked for the American Lung Association, a nonprofit. Just a side note, I had been a smoker for 15 years, a pack and a half a day. And then I took a job with the American Lung Association and found out that I was going to be like helping people quit smoking. And I was going to go into schools and talk to children and show them those actual lung specimens, and I knew I had to quit smoking, so I used their program, the American Lung Association's kind of like a behavior modification program, and it didn't click in. Like, I kept trying to quit. It was really hard to quit. I have to say it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done is quitting smoking. But eventually on a New Year's Eve, I made up my mind. That's it. No more. And so I am one of those people that had a New Year's resolution to quit smoking and actually did it. So I have not had a cigarette since, that was 1985, turning 1986, that New Year's Eve. I've been done with it. Somebody had an idea, let's do a fundraising event. Let's ride bikes across the country and raise money for the American Lung Association. So people started signing up to do this cross-country trip. I lived in Massachusetts at the time, and I was a staff member at the American Lung Association, and I was the only staff person that said I want to go on the trip. So these were people, just ordinary folks across the country, all different states. There were 200 of us, and we raised $1.2 million. And this was back in 1987, which was a big chunk of change for us to raise that kind of money. But it became a big, huge event. And on that trip, we did usually somewhere between 60 and 100 miles a day, lots of centuries mixed in. And one of the century days, actually, when I was coming into camp, there was a woman like 10 miles out running. She was on our trip. I didn't know her, but later when I got into camp, got showered and I found her. I was like, what were you doing? Meaning that she had rode her bike. She had gone and, ridden her bike 100 miles that day and then went for a 20-mile run that day. I said, what were you doing? Did you really? Like, I saw you like 10 miles before I got in. And she's like, yeah, cycling really doesn't do it for me. I don't really get a good workout. I'm like, what? And I was just like, I couldn't even wrap my mind around it, because I was always one of the last people into camp every day. And I just couldn't, I didn't have one more ounce of energy. I was done, basically set up my tent, go to bed and get up the next day. But then I couldn't stop thinking about her. Found out she was a triathlete, found out that she was one of the top triathletes in the country. And so my whole rest of the trip from, Minneapolis on was thinking about triathlon, because I didn't want to ride my bike across the country again, but I did want to do something. Like, I always like pushing myself out of my comfort zone. A woman on the trip named Ellie and I were talking. She was a volunteer, and I was telling her I really want to do a triathlon. The next year, she met a woman named Susan, and she said, they got talking, and Ellie mentioned something about triathlon, that I wanted to do a triathlon. And Susan said, my husband's best friend does triathlon. Oh, well, we should, get them to meet each other. But Ellie didn't know, them, and Susan didn't know me, but they ended up giving Bob Jordan my number. And so Bob called me up and he, said, hey, I got, my name's Bob Jordan, a total stranger. A friend named Sue gave me your number. And so we were looking to do it, when is a good time that we can have a date? And it ended up being, he was doing a triathlon on the day that we picked. And I'm like, you're doing a triathlon? Like, oh my gosh, can I come and watch? And he kind of had a momentary hesitation. He's like, okay. It was the Bay State Triathlon in Massachusetts, which was an IRONMAN qualifiers. And these really cool folks were there, like Dave Scott and Scott Tinley and Karen Smyers. And Bob was pointing out these really cool bikes. And I just fell in love that day. Honestly, with the sport, with the man, with all of it, just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Now, of course, I didn't know how to run. I mean, I couldn't run, so I thought. But then I tried, well, let me see. If I just try, what will happen? It was so weird. Here I had this body. I didn't even try because I believed this doctor that, when I was 17 to say, no, you can't do that. I'm like, okay. And then now here's more than a decade later, I'm like, I never tested it. I just took it and ran with it. Then Bob and I did Kauai Loves You. It was a race out there, and it was really, I think we had only known each other a month. That's the beginning, and here we are. What is this, 35 years later? Is that right? Yeah, wow, that's way cool. I want to thank Ed for asking me and inviting me to this team, and I want to thank each of our team members for saying yes. And I feel really grateful to be on this journey. I have no idea how it will all play out, but I'm really feeling grateful to be on it.